Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And today we are going to talk about the advantages of investing in established third-party graded collectibles. And this is all going to lead up to a video I'm going to premiere on this particular channel about investing in the 4 C's of the antiques and collectibles trade. And spoiler alert, I am not going to define what the 4 C's of investing in the antiques and collectibles trade are in this particular video. You're going to have to watch that video in its entirety when it premieres on this channel over the next week or so to get that particular information. But before we even get to that video, we have to take a step back and we have to look at the advantages of investing in established third-party graded collectibles. Now, there is one key word in this statement that I keep repeating to you: advantages of investing in established third-party graded collectibles. That word is established. If you guys recall, there are 3 markets that govern the antiques and collectibles trade, where pretty much any item that is of collectible nature can fit into quite nicely. The markets are speculative, established, and either mature or sophisticated. Now let's do a quick review of each of those markets. If we look at items that we would consider to be speculative, Magic the Gathering products, Pokemon products, vintage toys, video games, all those markets are unproven for an overall length of time in the antiques and collectibles trade. So they would fit into the speculative bucket of the antiques and collectibles trade as a whole. Now moving on from the speculative markets, you have the established markets. These are markets in the trade that are not yet considered antique overall. The markets are proven, but they're not proven to the point where generation after generation after generation after generation is going to flock to collecting these particular items. A good definition of what an established market encompasses would be vintage pre-1970 sports cards, pre-1965 comic books, vinyl records, items of that nature, items that have proven themselves, but they're not yet considered antique. They're not yet at the level where collectors and investors are flocking to them like they would rare coins, rare pieces of currency, high-end pieces of art, certain historical artifacts, first edition books, and the like. Those particular collecting categories that I just mentioned, they would be an example of mature and sophisticated markets in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. Now, this gets complex because you can have a market like vintage comic books where pre-1965 comic books fit quite nicely as being defined as established collectibles. Well, if we're talking about modern era comic books, obviously that's not an established collecting category. Vintage pre-1965 comic books are, but not modern era comic books. So you can have a collecting category like comic books that is on both the speculative side of the trade and also still has inroads to being an established market. It just depends on the item in question that we're talking about, guys. So this is very important. It does get a little bit complex. That's why it's important for you to watch this entire video. Then when I follow this up with the 4 C's of investing in the antiques and collectibles trade, it's all going to come together and you're going to see where I'm going with this. So whenever I talk about graded collectibles, especially on this channel, it causes a little bit of controversy. There's a lot of people out there in the wonderful internets that think that third-party grading is a scam. Sean, you don't understand. It's all a scam. It's designed to take little Timmy's money and take that money and put it in the pocket of an evil dealer or an investor or a grading company or an auction house. It's not designed to help the average collector. Well, I'm here to tell you, I 100% disagree with that statement. I am sorry. In markets where respectable third-party grading is the norm, those markets are better off because of that grading than they would be without third-party grading. And you have to understand that. There's always risks to third-party grading. There's always risks to investing in antiques, collectibles, or any asset class for that matter. But in my opinion, most respected third-party grading companies do an excellent job in bringing confidence and liquidity to the markets they serve. And that's what they are supposed to do. Now, when we talk about the advantages of investing in third-party graded collectibles, especially established third-party graded collectibles. There are certain pros to investing in these particular items that one has to understand. The first is greater liquidity. Grade for any type of overall third-party graded collectible is accepted on the marketplace by both the buyers and sellers in these particular markets. For instance, let's say that you have a giant size X-Men 1 and it's graded by CGC in 9.6 condition. Whether you sell that yourself on eBay, whether you consign it to Comic Link, whether you consign it to Hakes, whether you consign it to Heritage Auctions, guess what? Pretty much any buyer out there that's looking to buy a near mint or near mint plus copy of giant size X-Men 1 is going to look at that book and go, wow, CGC awarded that particular comic book a grade of 9.6. As a result, it's going to bring a higher price when it sells to the marketplace than if you pull an ungraded copy of giant size X-Men 1 out of your closet, list it on eBay, or try to consign it to Hakes or Heritage or Comic Link and try to convince them, hey, it's a near mint plus comic book, but I didn't send it to CGC. I don't want to get it graded. I want to sell it raw, but trust me, it's near mint plus because I said so. Obviously, CGC grading that 9.6 condition is going to matter more to a buyer than your opinion of that particular item and its condition as a seller. So this is something that we got to understand. There is greater liquidity in the market as a result of third-party grading than other markets where there is no third-party grading. Now, to be fair, obviously, third-party grading is not practical in all markets. Let's analyze it from this standpoint. Let's say that you tell me, Sean, I love collecting antique and vintage Tiffany art glass. Well, it would be kind of ridiculous if someone came out with a grading company where they took this beautiful Tiffany vase that's in either excellent or near mint condition, and they encased it in acrylic plastic, and they put a little label in there that says, this is an authentic Tiffany vase, and it's graded in 90 or 95 or 9.6 condition. I mean, let's be realistic. Most antique collectors would not feel too kind to a third-party grading company coming into that market. It doesn't really serve a purpose. If you drop a Tiffany vase, whether it's encased in plastic or not, obviously it's going to break. So at that point, that's an example of a collecting market that is on the mature side of the trade that would not overtly benefit from third-party grading. It would have no bearing. Most of the people that are going after Tiffany glass, they have the understanding and the knowledge as to how to authenticate and how to appraise Tiffany glass. That's why they're collecting it. It's more of a sophisticated market that you got to learn if you want to get into that market. The barrier to entry to collect something like Tiffany glass is a lot higher than to collect Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering cards or comic books, or even in certain instances, I'm going to say it, currency, and even in certain instances, rare coins. Those markets are different. Now, another thing that third-party grading does is it maintains value better over the short term and over the long term, and also graded collectibles. When they are part of an established market, they are easier to track. If you want to look up the value of an 1881 Carson City Morgan Silver Dollar graded by PCGS in MS66 condition, you can go all the way back to the 1980s, the mid-1980s, when third-party grading was established for coins, and you can go all the way up to today, modern era, 2021, and you can get a price history of that particular collectible if you so choose to. This is very important when it comes to established collecting categories that have third-party grading. The prices for these items are easier to track over the short term or the long term. Now, another advantage of going after third-party graded collectibles is they are easier to maintain, they are easier to store, and they are easier to insure. Remember, guys, I didn't do any videos as of yet on insuring antique and collectible collections. Those videos are coming. But if you call up an insurance company, even if they specialize in antiques and collectibles, and you say, hey, I have a very rare comic book here, it's an Action Comics 1. The first question they're going to ask you is, okay, what condition is it in? And how much do you think it's worth? Well, if it's ungraded and you pretty much inherited this particular comic book, you don't know much about comic books, you're going to have a hard time putting a value and a price range on that particular item, not to mention defining its condition. But if it's graded by CGC, oh, hey, I inherited this Action Comics 1. It's unrestored. It's in CGC 2.5 grade condition. The insurance company is going to have an easier time assessing the value and telling you what level of insurance you're going to need to insure an item like that versus an ungraded artifact in similar condition or from a market that does not have third-party grading. So you got to understand there is a financial incentive here. Not only are third-party graded collectibles better protected overall, but there are advantages. If that particular item is graded and you want to store it, you want to maintain it, and you want to insure it. So this is very important. Another thing that most people don't mention when it comes to established third-party graded collectibles, most of them have a unique serial number on the label, on the grading company's label for that particular item. That can be tracked online. So if you keep track of that number and that item gets stolen or it goes missing, as long as the person who steals it doesn't crack it out of the case and resubmit it to the grading company, that can actually be used to help track down that particular item if it shows up being consigned to an auction house or it ends up at a pawn shop or it's later found by another collector and you go, hey, that's the book that was stolen from my house. That's the comic book that I lost, or that's the rare coin that went missing. Well, that serial number helps identify the item in question. So that's also very important. And in certain instances, depending on how much that item's worth, the insurance company that you are choosing to insure that item with, they may even ask you for that individual serial barcode number so that they keep it on file as well. Another thing that you must understand, if you get involved in the market for established third-party grading collectibles, auction houses love them. Auction houses financially reward the consignment and sale of established and in-demand third-party graded collectibles. If you don't believe me, if you call up XYZ Antique Auction House and you have a room full of vintage advertising, there's going to be a lot of work that auction house has to undertake to pretty much get those items out of that room, photograph each one, analyze the assessment of the condition and authenticity of those items, and list it in an auction house. Where if you have a collection of rare coins, you have a collection of graded comic books, the grade is already defined. It's not subjective. So a company like Heritage or Hakes or Comic Link or even Morphe's, they can take that collection, they can photograph it or scan the items, and guess what? They don't have to authenticate it overall. They don't have to do anything with the condition. They can go, hey, this giant size X-Men 1 is in CGC 9.6 condition. We know its condition. We know pretty much what it's going to sell for on the secondary market. As a result, we can list it right away. So there is a financial incentive for auction houses to take those particular items over ungraded items because in most cases, there's less work involved for them to get them listed and put into their auction or catalog. Another thing that you got to understand is certain markets in the antiques and collectibles trade is governed solely by third-party grading. For instance, if you come to me and you say, Sean, I don't want to invest in rare coins. I want to invest in currency, but I don't want to touch anything that's third-party graded. And you tell me, but I want to go after investment grade items. You're going to have a problem doing that. Most of the coins, most of the currency pieces out there on the marketplace today that are of quote-unquote investment grade, most of that stuff is third-party graded. It's very rare for a collection to come to market at auction that is not third-party graded, unless if it's being sold by somebody who doesn't know better, or it's being sold by a lesser-known auction house. If you log on to Heritage, if you log on to Stocks and Bowers, if you log on to Legends, any of your top-tier coin and currency auction houses, pretty much 90% of what they're going to offer is going to be third-party graded. There are some exceptions. Every once in a while, they will sell off certain Morgan silver dollars in a certain grade or condition that don't meet the third-party grading requirements, and they sell them pretty much as just silver bullion. There's certain modern era coins that are sometimes sold ungraded. But for the most part, if an auction company is going to consign or going to take a collection of coins and currency, and they're going to put that in their auction catalog, they want those particular items to be graded. So even if you have somebody who's like 80, 90 years old, who got involved in coin collecting back before third-party grading became a prominent thing in the 1980s, pretty much that auction company is probably going to take that collection. They're going to look through, they're going to pull out the more prominent pieces, and they're going to send them off to be third-party graded before they auction them off. This is just the norm in some of these markets, guys. Now, with that being said, I'm going to end the video here because I am trying to do shorter videos for some of my newer viewers out there. But rest assured, this is all going to be talked about when we talk about the 4 C's of investing in the antiques and collectibles trade. Let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know your thoughts. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you again really soon.